And welcome to today's Way Forward Workshop, Leader Lunch Break. We are very pleased to welcome Joe Cimperman to the conversation. The experience of a newcomer to this country resonates deeply with Joe, for he is the son of immigrants. He grew up in a Slovenian-speaking home in the St. Clair Superior neighborhood and knows firsthand the struggles faced by immigrants. Since his days at John Carroll University, Joe's life has been one of leadership and service. While a student, he founded Project Gold, an organization dedicated to assisting families in need, and went on upon graduation to give back through working with the I Have a Dream Foundation and then the Jesuit Volunteer Corps in Maine and Maryland. He was called to return home to his beloved Cleveland to serve in city council for downtown in the richly diverse neighborhoods of the near West Side for 18 years. In 2016, he resigned from city council to take the helm of Global Cleveland as its president and CEO. His laser focus on welcoming international arrivals, immigrants, refugees, visitors, and students has elevated this important work in our community. Yet much more needs to happen. To inform us how we can be part of the change, we welcome Joe Cimperman, a fierce advocate and a proud Leadership Cleveland alum. Joe.
Good afternoon, Marianne, and hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here. Also, thank you for the walk-on music. Cher is one of my favorites. And it is so interesting, the song that you selected. I know how intentional Leadership Cleveland is because the theme of the song is if I could turn back time. And it's so apropos for this conversation because 1 century ago, between 1920 and 1930, the city of Cleveland had 48% of its population speaking a language first other than English. If you add the 25 to 30% of people who are migrating from the South, when you look at the composite of our great city, at the time that we were at our highest population, more people lived in Cleveland who were born outside of Cleveland and outside of the United States than those who were born here. And I say that to you as an introduction in this conversation because we all lean on great institutions in Cleveland, like the Metro Parks, like the Cleveland Foundation, like the City Club. And every single one of those organizations had its genesis in the decade that we were the most culturally, linguistically, and racially diverse in the history of our community. So I offer to you, as Cher the prophet says, if I could turn back time, our goal in this conversation, albeit brief, isn't to go back in time, but to look at where we are in the present and to look at where we're going to go in the future. And thank you, Leadership Cleveland, for always bringing people together and for being the idea factory that you are. Rachel, if we could begin our presentation. So Global Cleveland is an organization that is now in its 14th year. We were formed at the same time that cities like Milwaukee, Chicago, Detroit, Columbus, Cincinnati, the heartland cities, the American cities, were looking at how to do something that would in some cases go back to a time when more people were living here. I talked about the number being 48% of people who were born outside the US who have come to Cleveland 100 years ago. That number now every year in the city of Cleveland is about 5 to 7%. And as county council person Martin J. Sweeney can tell you, who's on this call right now, across the county, that number is closer to 10 to 11%. So clearly a number far less than half, now about 10% of our population, and looking at how we change that. And this is a photograph from one of our iconic events that happen in Cleveland every year at the Cleveland Cultural Gardens One World Day. And I'll just share with you, there's just so much culture to enjoy then. Next slide, please, Rachel. So our reason for being is pretty straightforward, to grow our economy by welcoming and connecting international people to opportunities that are here and fostering a more inviting community for those seeking a place to call home. Sounds pretty straightforward. I can share with you as somebody who grew up on East 74th in St. Clair. When I was growing up in the neighborhood to the near east of downtown, the feelings of welcome and the landing pads for immigrants and for newcomers were much more proliferate. And we had a lot more people who were coming. And as a result of that, the institutions the credit unions, the civic associations, the faith-based organizations were there. And it's something that Global Cleveland is looking to try to see how we can bolster the ones that are here and grow into the ones that would welcome the newcomer communities that are coming, not from Slovenia or Germany or Ireland, but people who are coming now from Congo, Nepal, Somalia, and other places around the world. Next slide, please. Our vision and goal is pretty straightforward. If you ever go to the Maltz Museum of Jewish History, it's I think one of our best museums here in Northeast Ohio. There's a great panel about what it means to be an American. And what we try to do is not only help the people who are here and the ones who want to come here, but also to externalize an international vision to the world, showing that we are a place where we are global, that we are welcoming, we are supportive. And this is a place where people can not only live and come, whether they're seeking refuge or a place in between going back home, but a place where they can actually thrive. And most importantly for this conversation, how they contribute to our economy and to our workforce. Next slide, please. This is a region, as you all know, that was built by people born outside of the United States. This data is a few years old. It's updated every half decade. But right now, this number of about 155,000 people who were born outside of the United States living here in Cuyahoga County. The economics are indisputable. I like to say that when we talk about immigration, I respect your feelings. I've been known from time to time to have an emotion. I'm pretty straightforward and dry, but these are numbers. These are facts. These are indisputable parts of the conversation. And when we look at the property values of those households, it's nearing $9 billion. When you look at what entrepreneurs have generated, and this is just in Northeast Ohio, these 8,300 people, it's close to 205 million. And when you look at the region's gross domestic product, it's in the billions. And when you think about the immigrant commuters who work in the region, people who are coming here, sometimes traveling from abroad, these are annual numbers, sometimes people who are coming from Canada or visiting, or other people who have business in one of our fantastic healthcare institutions, whether it's Metro Hospital, University Hospitals, or Cleveland Clinic. The number of people who are coming into our region born outside the US is close to 82,000 people. Next slide, please. Who do we serve? We have to be very straightforward. We serve international newcomers. And when I say that, people tend to understand it, but that's broken down in a few different ways. And as you all probably know, there are as many visas as there are letters in the alphabet. And Ed Bell, who's on this call right now, is one of my board members, hears this speech over and over. If you were in my family, you would start making the sound of a truck going backwards, going beep, beep, beep every time I repeat myself. But we serve people who are immigrants. We serve people who are refugees. Refugees are immigrants, but not every immigrant is a refugee. Refugees are an official classification of somebody who's coming from a place torn by war, a natural disaster, a famine, or political persecution. For a little bit of information here, when the people from Ukraine started to come to Cleveland, and we are in the top 10 places where they have come by Homeland Security's numbers, we're number 6 in the country for the 6th most welcoming place in the United States for Ukrainians by number. When they started to come to Cleveland, while we know them to be refugees, they were not considered refugees. They were considered visitor visas, student visas, family visas, people here on an extended visa, but they were not considered refugees. Why is that important? Number one, refugees have unlimited work visa status. They can work anywhere the minute they land. Number two, they're given a little bit of financial support by the United States. Number three, and this is something I love, and I've grown to love it even more, they must pay their plane ticket back to the US Treasury before they become a citizen. Most refugees in America, and this is true in Northeast Ohio, the numbers are close to above 90%. Most refugees become a citizen within a year of when they are legally allowed to. The United States says after you've been here for 6 years and 2 months, you can begin the active process. Most people who come here as refugees become US citizens by year 7 of them being here. They also must pay their plane ticket back. Some people think that's crazy. I will tell you it works in our society because it helps them build a credit record before they actually have their citizenship. And we all know how important that is for things that we need in our economy. We work with a lot of secondary migrants. One of the reasons why Northeast Ohio is in the top 5 places where people from Afghanistan have relocated has something to do with the fact that we've always been a welcoming place for people from Afghanistan. But as the war escalated and as the United States was beginning the evacuation, more and more people were coming to the U.S. I have an example of a family that lived off of West 117th Street. A man and a woman who both worked for the United States military and helping our armed forces brought their 3 kids here. Their entire family was resettled in San Diego. 18 brothers and sisters, cousins, nephews, and nieces. Those 18 moved to Cleveland from San Diego because of Bacht and his wife, who lived off of West 117th Street, and the way that they explained the opportunities were here in Northeast Ohio for them. It's a net gain. How do we know that? Because we've helped those family members with their education, with their medical care, as well as with their employment. Nobody officially in the federal government knows that they're here. Once they land in the United States, we think they're good. So the secondary migrant population, which numbers about 60 million people in America, is really important to pay attention to, because it's not just us attracting people from around the globe. It's attracting people who come from around the globe, who've settled in the United States, and sharing with them why Northeast Ohio and Cleveland is the place for them to experience their American dream. We have a lot of expats here. We have people who were born and raised in another place. Fred Geis, right? If you like the Heinens downtown. Gareth Vaughn, the head of Higley, right? Dr. Mihaljevic, right? Born in Croatia, wonderful head of CEO of the Cleveland Clinic. These are folks who are here, and many of them, through their own immigration routes, decided that Cleveland was the place to be, and we work with leaders like this. Ohio as a state and Northeast Ohio as a region do extremely well with attracting international students. Between the leadership of Vice Provost David Fleschler at Case Western and the incredible vision of people like Provost Nigmith Sridhar at Cleveland State, our region continues to grow in terms of international students. The state of Ohio continues to grow. We are the 3rd highest attracting state in the union of international students, 3rd only to New York and California. And so when I say to you that the international is here, this is a present tense and future tense conversation, much more than a past conversation. These are some of the factors that are into it. And we have to recognize that between the folks in Columbus and the folks in Northeast Ohio, our political leadership, regardless of their background, we do a heck of a job of attracting international people. And it's something that we should be proud of and an opportunity that we need to take more advantage of. And we work with organizations and individuals who welcome newcomers. As an example, this morning and later this afternoon, we're hosting one of the deputy ministers from the nation of Slovenia, who is here to study how we do migration and how we welcome refugees and immigrants. Slovenia is beginning to get more and more people from Ukraine as the Ukrainian war continues, and we see people moving into the Balkans and into areas like Slovenia. And so she's here on a 3-day fact-finding mission, and we've introduced her to about a half a dozen people. And so we were the first call when she said, "Do you know anybody who works in this space?" And we said, "We absolutely do." The bottom statistic's interesting. In the last decade, we grew by about 40,000 immigrants here in Cuyahoga County. Even though the headlines that you read in our many newspapers and journals show that our population in total is declining, the loss would have been far worse had we not had 40,000 immigrants moving into our community. What do we need to do? We need to pay attention, as Leadership Cleveland does, to places like Philadelphia that do a heck of a job of bringing people in. But I would argue even more so the city of Buffalo. City of Buffalo, right? Very similar city to Cleveland, one where there's a lot of empathy and emotions that we share with one another, being similar cities, grew in the last census based on 2 demographies. 1, African-American people moving into the city, and 2, people born outside the United States moving into Buffalo. We can do that. We can be that. The examples are right there. We don't have to look to Chicago to see how we can do that. Next slide, please. Oh boy, if you guys haven't gotten to know Marina Jackman, a wonderful woman who's Argentinian right here, you should. She invented an app on your iPhone. It's being used in many academic institutions across the region, where you learn how to speak Spanish, not based on AI or a robot, but she has created an economy between Northeast Ohio and places throughout Central and South America where for an hour and for about $6 an hour, you literally tag into the app and you have a live conversation with a real person. It is an outstanding effort. Where did she start her business? Right here in Cleveland, Ohio. How do I know her? She joined our program called Global Rising, which is modeled very much on what Leadership Cleveland does, albeit for immigrants and for young entrepreneurs. And we work with her to figure out what her plan is, who she needs to connect to, and she's an outstanding person. We have a Global Employer Summit series. If you're a company that's looking to hire people, go to our website. We have almost every other month now a session with how we can help people find international talent, how we can help them plug gaps in their workforce. Global Rising, we're in our 3rd year. I'll just share a really quick story with you guys. When we began the program, I was approached by a person in Cleveland who's a nonprofit leader, and he said, I met a woman who fled from Tehran, and she wants to be a lawyer. So I got to know Samira. Samira had been a prosecutor in Tehran. She was prosecuting a high government official's brother who was involved in a domestic violence case. She was told to drop the case. She said, I won't drop it. She was told, don't go home tonight. She didn't. She came to Cleveland because she heard of Case Western. She came to Global Rising in our 1st year and said, I want to be a lawyer. I had 15 years of experience in Tehran. It's basically gone now. Through our board and through the incredible leadership of Dean Lee Fisher at Cleveland State, and through a generous donor, we got her a full ride to Cleveland State. She graduates next year. She's already got a job offer. How do we help our international talent integrate faster? She's a brilliant lawyer. She did great in Tehran. She's going to be a hell of a prosecutor or a lawyer here in Cleveland. This is what we can do when we focus ourselves and help these individuals. And then we have a podcast where we feature great people who are international, who tell their story about what it's like to be in Cleveland. It's one of my favorite things. We actually have a chance to really listen to them. The stories are very quick, 15, 20 minutes. You'll meet people from all over the world who happen to be making their way right here in Northeast Ohio. Next slide, please, Rachel. The crises. As the great mathematician from Greece once said, give us a place to stand and we will move the world. Global Cleveland says, give us a place to stand and we will welcome the world. The Afghanistan Legal Clinic, we helped about 950 people apply for visas. We've currently got about 5,000 people from Afghanistan living here. That community is quickly accessing the middle class. They're forming their own Afghan Community Association. They're incredible people. They helped our armed forces. They're just amazing. We get to know them. Last year, we had a Ukrainian legal clinic where 15 of our best lawyers in Northeast Ohio donated 8 hours of their day and gave hours of free legal advice. When things last spring were really up in the air, things are no less up in the air. And so tomorrow in Parma, the home of Mayor DeGeeter and so many wonderful things in Parma, we will be having another free legal clinic. Also, the Cleveland Food Bank comes. Also, the school districts come. Also, many of our resettlement agencies come. And the purpose is for people to see that they're welcome here, but we want to help them. We don't think we are going to see one person tomorrow that we saw last year. Folks are moving very quickly into independence. And that's what we need to remember, is that these are folks who only need help for a short time. And then, we can watch them as they go to the stars. It's our Ukrainian legal clinic. Everyone's welcome. It's a lot of intensity, but it's just something that we do with regard to crises. Next slide, please, Rachel. Right here, we have the vice mayor of our sister city, Vicenza, Italy, meeting with our mayor, Mayor Justin Bibb, who's been an extraordinary champion for international people and internationalism. We held a sister city conference at the Cleveland Public Library, one of our wonderful partners. The county library is as well. We focus on things like job fairs. Through our Sister Cities program, there's some economic development opportunities that are happening right now. We only need to look at great leaders in our region who are doing this on their own and through their great organizations. Many of you know that Aer Lingus is about to leave Hopkins now every single week, many times a week, to go to the beautiful island of Ireland. That was led by people like Mark Owens and Bill Kaler. Mark Owens, who is our Irish Consul General, the first one here in Northeast Ohio, who along with the city and the county and the state did amazing things to make that happen. Mark happens to have been born in Derry. He himself is an immigrant, now a United States citizen. Sister Cities program, our sister city is Mayo. The relationship between cities is the city as a door to the nation. These are the things that can work over and over and over again, and great cities realize that. We've had a lot of success with workforce promotion. We just had a company hire its fourth person that we were able to introduce them to. Generally, what happens when people get hired through Global Cleveland, the person, him or herself, has a network. We get the right person into the job, and suddenly opportunities open. There's a company on East 40th and Kelly that models this. It's called Buckeye Business Products, led by Mr. Bob Canner and Benny Bonanno. About 8 years ago, they hired 2 people from Afghanistan and 1 from Nepal. 2 and 1 now is 35 immigrants from all over the world who are working in their company who came from that 2 and 1 combination. And so what we try to do is find companies that treat people with dignity and respect, and that human network, that kind of networking really takes off. And I'm really proud to say that we are the only organization in the state of Ohio that is able to issue an H-1B visa, which is considered one of the gold standards of visas. It's actually something that leads you to a permanent resident visa or a green card, which leads you to permanent citizenship as a United States citizen. If you are an entrepreneur and you want to start a company and you're here in Cleveland, working with Cleveland State, working with Case Western, working soon with the University of Akron, we can, through the Department of Homeland Security, through a committee of people who vet these ideas, look at your business plan. And if you start a business here, you get an H-1B visa. You're employing people, you're growing this program. In Detroit alone, of the 15 founders, they employ 180 people, 90% of whom are born in the city of Detroit. Massachusetts has so many people taking advantage of this program through the federal government. They are sending people to Cleveland to begin their businesses here. We're the only ones in Ohio right now that are doing it. We're working with our state, we're working with our county and city leadership, and we have our first founder. We just started this program a few months ago. He's a young man named Aaron George who started a food supply business. He already has 15 people working for him. He created this business out of his mind. He was an engineer at Case and thought there's a better way to do food delivery, and he's just doing an outstanding job. And if you're looking for ways to invest or get to know him, if you also know people who are looking to get a visa, let us know. We have room for 2 more in this first section, and we're looking to make sure that we get the right folks. Next slide, please. Civic engagement. As you can see on the right, if you guys don't know Sanjeev Kapoor, you should. He's an amazing attorney, speaks fluent Portuguese, lived in Brazil for a long time, moved back up to Cleveland a few years ago with his triplets, who are now in college, and Sanjeev is a great partner and a board member. This was an event that we had with our county leadership, talking to regular immigrants and refugees who are asking people questions. Every single week, we're meeting with elected officials. A few weeks ago, we were in Columbus. We had the honor and privilege of meeting with State Representative Sweeney, Bride Sweeney. Last week, we met with Councilman Richard Starr. We meet with county council people as well. We talk to anybody and everybody. Our goal is to always educate people and let them know the power of the immigrant workforce, the immigrant economic development. Welcoming Week is always in September. It's usually the 2nd or 3rd week in September. We hold a series of events. It's a lot of fun. We do a lot of things where we focus on the international greatness among us. Every single month, 4 times a month at the federal courthouse, people are taking the oath to the United States to become U.S. citizens. In my head, I'm singing Neil Diamond's America. In my heart, I'm feeling incredible pride. I will share with you all, without tipping my hand to any faith or religion, it is the most American spiritual moment you can have. To see people saying that they want to be part of this society and this democracy and this nation, people from all over the world, is breathtaking. We volunteer at every single one of these events and have for the last 6 years. I will tell you, when we started, we were welcoming about 2,500 people to Cleveland every year. We're closer to 5,000 now pre-COVID, and we're building those numbers up. Naturalization ceremonies are a great way to get to know the international community, and we always welcome people to come. Legal clinics, as you know, we're involved in a few of them for Afghanistan, for Ukraine. We're really happy that Legal Aid is offering some naturalization clinics coming up, and we'll be supporting them in what they do. And the candidate forums are a chance not to be political, but for our leadership to know the community that's out there and what's possible here in Northeast Ohio. Next slide, please. Here's our issue. 80% of our companies are experiencing a talent shortage. Almost 100% are saying they have a lack of qualified applicants. Next slide, please. What's the problem? We, quote unquote, lack necessary talent in the state. In Northeast Ohio, the shortages are 13%, higher than the US average. What is the solution? Ohio is a top 10. It's actually a top 5 state for attracting international students. We need to convert the people coming to school here to come to work here. Where are they going after they leave Ohio State, Cleveland State, Case Western, Kent State, Bowling Green, and Wright State? I wish they were going home to Pakistan to deal with flooding, or India to deal with air pollution, or anywhere where they could take their talents that they learned here and make the world a better place. No, they're going to New York and California. That is unconscionable. We are better than both of those states. We need to attract people the way that we are better than both of those states, and keeping the international students here is how. Next slide, please. Nationwide talent shortages, you can see from the graph on the left, new jobs created and pandemic job recovery is well above the jobs that are filled right now. Refugees who are coming to Northeast Ohio, and at our peak in 2016, we were at about 1,500 people. They are unrestricted work visa holders. We are in the top 10 in the country for doing what we do best as Northeast Ohioans, as Ohioans, as Clevelanders, which is to be kind, which is to be welcoming, which is to say to people, brush your shirt off, let's get to work. Right now in Northeast Ohio, we have currently about 15,000 refugees living here. In Ohio as a state, it's closer to 70,000. Next slide, please. The supply and demand gap when it comes to talent, we're number 5 in the nation for Fortune 500. We know this, whether it's Intel, whether it's Sherwin-Williams. We're the number 3 best state for business climate and best for opportunity. And yet our international students, 1 in 5 entrepreneurs are immigrants. The majority of Nobel Prize laureates who study research in the US are immigrants. And almost 50% of our Fortune 500 companies are founded by immigrants or their kids. We know what we need to do. We have to be present to it, and we're doing that right now. Cleveland State and at Case Western, through the leadership of Greater Cleveland Partnership and a great woman named Kara Carter, we're working to find 150 people internships by the end of the year, working very closely with folks at Leadership Cleveland, as well as the Cleveland Talent Alliance through Destination Cleveland. And how do we keep more of our talent here, more of our kids who grew up here, more of our kids who come to school here? And this is all part of it. There is a solution. It means being intentional about having people realize this is a place where they can find the career of their dreams. Next slide, please. We encourage you to connect with us. We are always looking for support, whether it's ideas, whether it's volunteering. There are 8 of us on staff. We work very hard to be the organization that faces the world and says, please come to Cleveland, and to the people who are here, please stay here. But we're very fortunate and we're very lucky to be in the community that we are. And thank you all for listening. And I'm hopeful, if I haven't overspoken, for any questions that may be here.
Joe, thank you so much. So we have time for a question, and really it's, what is it going to take for our community to really embrace hiring the international talent we have here? And how can those of us on the call help advocate to move in that direction?
If anyone is hiring for the summer, for summer help, right? And typically we call that person an intern. We have a program called the OPT, Occupational Professional Training, where you would include in your intern search students who are born outside the US. We tell people it's a great way to see if that's somebody you want to hire permanently. I will tell you it's a great way for people to bring a different culture, a different language skill, a different sensibility to your company. It is easier to hire an international student. It is one piece of paper. You don't need an immigration lawyer. You don't need Joe Cimperman. We'd be more than happy to connect you to the students at Cleveland State, Case, Kent State, Akron, all of our schools. Many of our students are looking to stay here for the summer. Giving them that first shot at working for a company is something that we would encourage people to do. We'd also encourage people to talk about this. The biggest challenge that I have, Rachel, is that we take immigrants and immigration for granted. Everyone's Irish on St. Patrick's Day. Everyone's Polish on Dingus Day. Hats off on Cinco de Mayo, right? We all feel these cultural touch points, but the truth is we're an international city and we have to start being a lot more blatant about it instead of depending on the latency of it. And the way that we do that is by encouraging more people as we're having conversations, very important conversations around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and fighting racism and doing everything that we need to do. Cleveland is a both and city. We can do these important things and also realize that making our city more inclusive, more culturally diverse, and fighting the systems that have hurt a lot of people can also include welcoming our immigrant sister and brother from around the world.
I think we're out of time for questions. Joe, that was amazing. Incredible amount of information in a very short period of time. So I hope that everyone will take Joe up on his offer to connect and find ways how we can be a part of the change and join him in welcoming international newcomers to our city.